The memorial hall stood quiet in the afternoon light. Jake Morrison carried his camera equipment through the wide doors, his boots echoing on the polished stone floor. Behind him, Linda Carter pulled a case filled with recording devices. They had traveled 3 weeks to reach this place, crossing half the galaxy to find the truth. "Are you sure he'll talk to us?" Linda asked, looking around at the empty hall. Memorials from a dozen different species lined the walls, names carved in stone, faces captured in holographic displays. All of them remembered the war that had ended 15 years ago. Jake nodded. He said he would. After all these years, he wants to tell his story. They walked deeper into the hall until they found him. Vexthor sat on a bench designed for his insectoid body. His carapace had dulled with age, and his forearms trembled slightly as he held a datapad. When he looked up at them, his compound eyes reflected the light in strange patterns. "You are the human filmmakers," Vexthor said. His voice came through a translator device attached to his throat. It made his words sound mechanical, but Jake could hear the emotion underneath. "Yes, sir," Jake said, setting down his equipment. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We know this isn't easy." Vexthor made a clicking sound that the translator didn't bother to interpret. "Nothing about the war was easy. Talking about it is the least difficult thing I have done." He gestured with one of his upper arms toward 2 chairs nearby. "Please sit. We should begin before I lose my courage." Linda set up the recording devices while Jake positioned the camera. They had interviewed 17 veterans already, both human and alien. Each one had their own perspective on the war. But Vexthor was different. He had fought against humans before his people switched sides. He had seen humanity from the enemy's point of view. "Whenever you're ready," Linda said softly, activating the recorders. Vexthor was quiet for a long moment. His breathing apparatus wheezed slightly. Finally, he began to speak. "I was a tactical officer in the Zentari fleet, young, ambitious, proud of my position. When the Galactic Union made first contact with humanity, I thought nothing of it, just another species taking their first steps into the greater galaxy. We had seen hundreds of new species. Humans seemed unremarkable." Jake leaned forward slightly. "When did that change?" "When we decided to test them," Vexthor said. His voice carried a weight of regret. "The Galactic Union operates on a principle. New species must prove themselves. They must show strength or they become subjects of stronger powers. It is not a kind system, but it is the system we have always used." Linda glanced at Jake. They both knew this part of the story. The Galactic Union hadn't welcomed humanity with open arms. They had challenged them, pushed them, tested their resolve. The Krell Dominion wanted to expand into human space. Vexthor continued. "They claimed several human colonies in the Outer Rim. My people, the Zentari, we supported them. We thought it would be a simple matter. The humans had small ships, limited weapons, no understanding of galactic warfare. We expected them to surrender or be conquered within months. But that didn't happen," Jake said. Vexthor's mandibles clicked together. "No, that did not happen." He paused, his body language shifting into something that might have been shame. "We sent a fleet to a human supply station. Kepler Station, they called it. It was a minor outpost, barely defended. We thought we would capture it, use it as a forward base, show the humans that resistance was futile." The old alien reached into a pouch on his body armor and pulled out a small device. He activated it, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed a star map with ship positions marked in different colors. "This was the battle formation," Vexthor said, pointing with one claw. 20 Zentari warships against 5 human vessels. We had superior firepower, better shields, more experienced crews. By every logical calculation, we should have won within an hour." "What happened?" Linda asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "We attacked at dawn, their time," Vexthor said, his eyes distant with memory. "Our first volley disabled 2 of their ships immediately. The humans scattered, trying to regroup. We pursued, confident in our victory. Admiral Krathnik's my commander. He was already planning the occupation. He was discussing which human territories we would claim next." Vexthor's voice grew quieter. Then everything changed. One of the damaged human ships, a vessel they called the Defiant, it suddenly altered course. We thought perhaps their engines had malfunctioned, but no, they were steering directly toward our flagship. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories about human tactics during the war, desperation moves that seemed insane to other species. "They rammed you?" Linda asked. They sacrificed their ship to breach our hull, Vexthor confirmed. The Defiant was already dying. Atmosphere leaking, crew casualties at 70%. Any other species would have surrendered or evacuated. But the humans, they accelerated. Their commander sent us a message just before impact. I still remember the words. He said, "We're just getting started." The holographic display shifted, showing the moment of impact. Jake watched as the smaller human ship drove itself into the larger Zentari vessel like a spear. The collision killed everyone on the Defiant instantly, Vexthor said, but it also tore open our hangar bay, exposed 3 decks to vacuum. We lost 200 crew members in the first minute. Admiral Krathnix ordered damage control teams to seal the breach. We thought the danger had passed. Vexthor stood up slowly, his old body protesting the movement. He walked toward the memorial wall where names from different species were carved together. Humans and aliens who had eventually fought side by side. Then we detected movement in the wreckage, he continued. At first we thought it was debris, but our sensors showed life signs. Human life signs. Inside the destroyed section of our ship, inside a section exposed to vacuum and radiation. How? Jake asked, though he knew humans could survive in space for short periods with proper equipment. They were wearing combat armor, Vexthor said. Basic protection suits, not designed for extended vacuum exposure. By all our medical knowledge, they should have been dead or dying. Instead, they were cutting through the wreckage, making their way deeper into our ship. Linda checked her recording devices, making sure they captured every word. This was the heart of the story, the moment when aliens realized humans were different. We sent security teams to intercept them, Vexthor said. 3 squads of Zentari warriors fully armed and armored. They met the humans in Corridor 7. I was monitoring from the tactical station. I watched the entire engagement through security cameras. What did you see? Jake asked. Vexthor turned to face them. His compound eyes reflected the light in a way that made him look haunted. I saw 30 humans fight like nothing I had ever witnessed. They had improvised weapons, pieces of their own destroyed ship, metal bars, sharpened edges, anything they could use. They moved through our warriors like a storm. Fast, brutal, efficient. He shook his head slowly, but it wasn't just their fighting skills. It was their refusal to stop. One human took a plasma blast to the shoulder. It should have incapacitated him. Instead, he used his remaining arm to strike down 2 of our warriors before collapsing. Another had her helmet cracked, exposed to the thin atmosphere we breathe. She continued fighting for 3 more minutes before her squad dragged her to safety. Jake felt his throat tighten. He thought about his own father who had died in the war. He wondered if his father had fought with that same desperate courage. The humans pushed deeper into our ship. Vexthor continued. They reached the reactor level. We were forced to choose between fighting them and protecting our power core. Admiral Krathnix made the decision to retreat. We abandoned our flagship and withdrew to the other ships in the fleet. You retreated from a boarding action? Linda asked, surprise in her voice. We fled, Vexthor said simply. The humans had turned our greatest advantage into a weakness. They had done the impossible, and we knew if we stayed, they would destroy us all. He looked at Jake and Linda with an expression that transcended species barriers. It was pure, honest fear. That day I learned the truth about humans, he said. You do not fight the way we fight. You do not calculate odds or preserve forces for future battles. When you are pushed, when you are threatened, you become something terrifying. You become relentless. The memorial hall seemed to grow colder. Jake glanced at Linda and saw his own emotions reflected in her face. Pride, sadness, and a deep understanding of what their species had endured. Vexthor returned to his bench and sat down heavily. That was only the first battle, he said. The beginning of everything. After Kepler Station, the war changed. We thought we understood warfare. We were children playing at war. The humans taught us what real war meant. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. And the galaxy is never forgotten. Vexthor closed his eyes, and for a moment Jake thought the old alien might stop the interview. But then he spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of memory. I need to tell you what I saw that day, all of it, so you understand why the galaxy feared your kind. The holographic display flickered back to life, showing the moments before the Defiant's collision with the Zentari flagship. Vexthor manipulated the controls with practiced ease, rewinding time itself. This was Commander Kyle Barnes, Vexthor said, highlighting one of the human ships. He commanded the Defiant. We had intercepted his communications during the battle. He knew his ship was dying. His crew was dying. Any rational commander would have surrendered or evacuated. Linda watched the display intently, but he didn't. No, Vexthor confirmed. He made a choice that defined everything that came after. He ordered his remaining crew to seal themselves in the most reinforced section of the ship. Then he programmed the engines for maximum acceleration and aimed directly at us. The display showed the Defiant's final moments. The small human vessel, trailing atmosphere and debris, suddenly surged forward with unexpected speed. Jake could see the precision in the maneuver. This wasn't a desperate act. It was calculated. Kyle Barnes was a tactical genius, Vexthor said quietly. He knew exactly where to hit us. The hangar bay was our weakest point during combat operations. The shields there were designed to allow our fighters to launch and return, which meant they cycled on and off in patterns. He timed his impact for the precise moment when they would be down. Jake felt a strange mixture of pride and sorrow. How many of his crew survived the impact? None aboard the Defiant, Vexthor said. They all died instantly when the ships collided, but Barnes had sent a message to the other human vessels before his final charge. He had given them an opportunity and they used it. The holographic display shifted again, showing the chaos aboard the Zentari flagship after the collision. Vexthor's claws moved through the air, pointing out different sections. The impact killed 200 of our crew immediately, he explained. It also destroyed our launch bay and damaged our main engines. But worse, it created a breach that extended through 3 decks. Our damage control teams rushed to seal it, but before they could, the other human ships moved in. That's when the Marines arrived, Linda said. Vexthor made that clicking sound again. Yes, Major Amy Rodriguez commanded the Marine force. She led 300 soldiers in armored pods that launched from the remaining human ships. They flew through the debris field and entered our vessel through the hole Kyle Barnes had created for them. The display showed tiny dots representing the human Marines entering the Zentari flagship. They moved with purpose, spreading through the damaged sections like water finding cracks in stone. I was still at my tactical station, Vexthor continued. I watched the sensor readings as the humans penetrated deeper into our ship. Admiral Krathnix ordered all security forces to converge on their position. We had nearly 1,000 warriors on that ship. The humans had 300 Marines, many of them already injured from the rough entry. But numbers didn't matter, Jake said. Numbers never mattered with humans, Vexthor replied. That was something we learned too late. Amy Rodriguez split her forces into small teams. They moved through our ship like they had trained there for years. They knew exactly where to go, what systems to target. Later we learned they had studied Zentari ship designs from captured data. They had prepared for this moment. Vexthor stood again and walked to a different section of the memorial. This part showed images from the battle, captured by security cameras and combat recorders. The images were grainy but clear enough to see what had happened. This was Corridor 7, Vexthor said, pointing to one image, where our security teams first engaged the humans. 30 humans against 90 Zentari warriors. We had the advantage of numbers, position, and firepower. We should have stopped them easily. The next image showed the aftermath. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Bodies in Zentari armor lay scattered across the corridor. Only a handful appeared to be human. What happened? Linda asked softly. The humans fought like nothing we had ever encountered, Vexthor said. Our warriors are trained, disciplined, strong. But the humans, they fought with a ferocity that shocked us. They used their weapons until they ran out of ammunition. Then they used pieces of their own destroyed equipment as weapons. When those broke, they used their hands. Vexthor's voice trembled slightly. I watched one human Marine take a plasma blast that burned through her armor. The shot would have killed any Zentari instantly. She fell and we thought she was dead. But then she stood back up. She picked up a piece of metal from the floor and threw it like a spear, killing the warrior who had shot her. Then she collapsed again. Her name was Corporal Lisa Bennett, Jake said quietly. He had researched the battle extensively. She survived. She's still alive today. I know, Vexthor said. I met her years later after the war ended. I asked her how she kept fighting after being wounded so badly. She told me she had squad mates who needed her. She told me giving up wasn't an option she had considered. The old alien moved to the next image. This one showed Amy Rodriguez herself, her armor scorched and dented, leading a group of Marines through a junction point. Major Rodriguez reached our reactor level within an hour of boarding. Vexthor said. She had lost a third of her forces by then, but the survivors were right behind her. They planted explosive charges on 3 critical systems. Then she sent Admiral Krathnik's a message. What did she say? Linda asked. She said, "You have 5 minutes to evacuate your crew before I detonate these charges. After that, everyone dies together." Vexthor's eyes grew distant. Admiral Krathnik's tried to negotiate. He offered surrender terms, prisoner exchanges, anything to buy time for our warriors to reach her position. Rodriguez refused. She said the time for negotiation had passed when we attacked Kepler Station. Jake could picture the scene. A human officer, wounded and exhausted, standing in the heart of an enemy ship with her hand on the detonator, refusing to back down, refusing to compromise. The Admiral gave the evacuation order, Vexthor continued. We had 3,000 crew members on that flagship. Getting them all off in 5 minutes was impossible. But Rodriguez knew that. She gave us time. Not much, but enough to save most of our people. She showed mercy, Linda said. She showed that humans understand the difference between war and murder, Vexthor replied. She could have detonated immediately. She could have killed everyone. Instead, she gave us a chance. But she also made it clear that the chance was limited. When the 5 minutes ended, she would follow through on her threat. The display showed the evacuation, Zentari crew members rushing to escape pods and smaller ships, the fleet pulling back to a safe distance. And then exactly 5 minutes later, the flagship exploded. Amy Rodriguez and her remaining Marines died in that explosion. Vexthor said, 47 humans chose to stay with her rather than attempt an escape. They could have tried to flee. Our evacuation was chaotic. They might have made it to a pod. But they stayed with their commander. Jake felt tears threatening. He blinked them back, maintaining his professional composure. Beside him, Linda wiped at her eyes openly. The destruction of our flagship ended the battle, Vexthor said. The remaining Zentari ships retreated. The humans had lost 2 vessels and nearly 500 personnel. We had lost our flagship, over 1,000 crew members, and our confidence. We reported back to the Galactic Union that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. He turned away from the memorial wall and looked directly at the camera. But the galaxy did not listen. The Krell Dominion especially refused to believe our reports. They thought we had simply been careless or unlucky. They insisted that humans could be defeated with proper tactics and overwhelming force. They were wrong, Jake said. They were catastrophically wrong, Vexthor agreed. And many species paid the price for that arrogance. The war spread across dozens of systems. Every time we thought we understood human capabilities, they surprised us again. Every time we thought we had found their limit, they surpassed it. Vexthor returned to his bench and sat down slowly. His breathing apparatus wheezed again, and Jake wondered how much this conversation was costing the old veteran. After Kepler Station, I was reassigned to intelligence analysis, Vexthor said. My job was to study human tactics and predict their movements. I spent years watching combat footage, reading intercepted communications, interviewing survivors from both sides. I became an expert on human warfare. What did you learn? Linda asked. I learned that humans are persistence hunters, Vexthor said. On your homeworld, your ancestors hunted prey by chasing them until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. You did not need to be faster or stronger. You just needed to never give up. That instinct, that refusal to quit, it translates to warfare in terrifying ways. He manipulated the holographic display again, showing a map of the war's progression. Human forces marked in blue, enemy forces in red. The blue pushed steadily forward, never retreating for long, always adapting and advancing. Other species fight battles, Vexthor said. Humans fight wars. Linda paused the recording for a moment and offered Vexthor water from a specially designed container. The old Zentari accepted it gratefully, his mandibles working slowly as he drank. Jake used the break to check his camera angles and battery levels. They had been recording for 3 hours, but it felt like minutes. Are you okay to continue? Jake asked gently. Vexthor set down the water container and nodded. Yes, there is more you need to understand. The battles I have described were only the beginning. The war lasted 7 years. 7 years of watching humans do the impossible over and over again. Linda restarted the recording. What happened after Kepler Station? The Krell Dominion escalated, Vexthor said. They sent larger fleets, more soldiers, better weapons. They were determined to prove that humans could be defeated through conventional warfare. For the first year, they focused on human colonies in the Outer Rim. They thought if they could conquer those settlements, they could force Earth to negotiate. The holographic display changed, showing a planet covered in red markers. Jake recognized it from his research. Arcturus III, the site of one of the longest sieges in the war. This was the siege of Arcturus III, Vexthor said. A human mining colony with 50,000 civilians and 5,000 military personnel. The Krell surrounded the planet with a blockade fleet and demanded surrender. The humans refused. I've heard stories about Arcturus III, Linda said. The colony held out for months. 6 months, Vexthor confirmed. The Krell cut off all supply lines. No food, no medical supplies, no reinforcements. They bombarded the colony's defenses daily. They believed the humans would surrender once they began to starve. Instead, the humans dug in deeper. Vexthor pulled up images from the siege. Human soldiers in makeshift bunkers, civilians working in underground farms, children carrying ammunition to gun emplacements, everyone contributing to the defense. The colony commander was Captain Dan Foster, Vexthor said. He had been a logistics officer before the war, not a combat commander. But he understood resources and survival. He organized the entire colony into a resistance network. Every person had a job. Even the children helped maintain equipment or grow food in the hydroponic gardens. Jake watched the images scroll past. He saw exhaustion in the faces, the toll the siege was taking, but he also saw determination. These people had decided they would rather die fighting than surrender. The Krell expected the colony to collapse within 6 weeks, Vexthor continued. After 3 months, they were frustrated. After 6 months, they were desperate. The blockade was costing them resources and ships. Other human forces were harassing their supply lines. The siege had become a strategic disaster. What ended it? Linda asked. The humans broke the blockade from the inside, Vexthor said. A note of admiration entered his voice. Captain Foster had been secretly building attack shuttles in underground factories, using mining equipment and salvaged parts. When the Krell fleet thought the colony was at its weakest, Foster launched 50 shuttles packed with explosives and volunteers. The display showed the breakout attempt, small human craft erupting from hidden launch sites flying straight at the Krell warships. Suicide runs, every single one, but they created gaps in the blockade. 20 shuttles made it through, Vexthor said. They destroyed or damaged 8 Krell ships. More importantly, they broke the psychological grip of the siege. Within hours, human relief forces arrived and drove off the remaining Krell vessels. The colony had survived. Jake felt a chill. How many volunteers died in those shuttles? All of them, Vexthor said quietly. Every pilot knew it was a one-way trip. They volunteered anyway. Captain Foster led the first shuttle himself. He survived barely when his craft was caught in a Krell ship's hangar bay, but 37 others died to save 50,000. The old alien shifted on his bench. That was when I truly began to understand human psychology. You have a concept, self-sacrifice, that is rare among other species. Most sentient beings have strong self-preservation instincts. Humans have those instincts too, but you can override them for a greater cause. We protect our own, Linda said softly. Yes, but it is more than that, Vexthor replied. You protect your ideas, your principles, your future. A Krell warrior will die for his hive, but only if ordered. A human will volunteer to die for strangers if it serves a purpose they believe in. Vexthor brought up a new set of images. These showed a different kind of warfare. Small teams of humans moving through alien territory, destroying installations, disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. While conventional battles raged, human special operations teams conducted a shadow war, Vexthor explained. Groups of 5 to 10 soldiers operating deep behind enemy lines. They sabotaged supply depots, assassinated commanders, spread misinformation. They were ghosts. One image showed a human soldier in dark armor, face concealed by a helmet. The quality was poor, captured by a security camera in the moment before it was destroyed. This was Lieutenant Greg Palmer, Vexthor said. He commanded one of the most effective special operations teams in the war. His unit was called Ghost Squad, and they were responsible for over 200 successful missions. The Krell put a massive bounty on his head. Every intelligence agency in the galaxy tried to track him. But he operated for 5 years without being caught. What kind of missions did he run? Jake asked. Impossible ones, Vexthor said simply. He infiltrated a Krell command station and destroyed it from the inside. He rescued prisoners from a heavily guarded facility. He stole classified data from a Zentari intelligence ship. Each mission should have been suicide. Each time he and his team succeeded and escaped. Vexthor manipulated the display, showing a detailed map of one particular mission. This was his most audacious operation. The Krell had developed a new weapon, a plasma cannon capable of destroying human ships from extreme range. It was stationed on a moon with 5,000 troops guarding it. Greg Palmer took 7 people and destroyed both the weapon and the research facility where it was developed. How? Linda asked, leaning forward. By being patient, Vexthor said. His team spent 3 months infiltrating the base. They posed as maintenance workers using forged credentials. They learned the facility's routines, identified weaknesses, waited for the perfect moment. Then in one night, they planted charges throughout the complex and escaped before anyone realized they had been there. Jake tried to imagine the patience required for such a mission. 3 months of pretending, of blending in among enemies, knowing that one mistake would mean death or capture. When the charges detonated, the entire facility collapsed, Vexthor continued. 500 Krell soldiers died instantly. The weapon was destroyed. The research data was corrupted, and Greg Palmer's team was already light years away before the Krell even knew who had done it. The Krell must have been terrified, Linda said. They were, Vexthor confirmed, but fear made them angry, and anger made them reckless. They began to strike at human targets more aggressively, trying to force the humans into a decisive battle. They did not understand that humans excel at adapting to changing circumstances. The display shifted again, showing a medical facility. Human doctors and nurses worked on injured soldiers, both human and alien. Vexthor highlighted one figure in particular. This is Corporal Lisa Bennett, he said, the Marine who continued fighting after being shot. After she recovered from her wounds, she trained as a combat medic. She spent the rest of the war saving lives on both sides of the conflict. Jake remembered Lisa Bennett from his research. She had become famous for treating wounded enemy soldiers even in the middle of battles. Lisa Bennett embodied another aspect of human nature that confused us, Vexthor said. You can be ruthlessly effective in combat, but also compassionate toward defeated enemies. She would fight Krell soldiers to the death, then immediately work to save any who surrendered or were too injured to fight. That's just being human, Linda said. To other species, it seemed contradictory, Vexthor replied. How could the same person who killed efficiently also heal compassionately? But humans do not see a contradiction. You understand that war is a temporary state, that enemies today might be allies tomorrow. That mercy is not weakness. Vexthor paused, his breathing apparatus wheezing louder now. Jake wondered if they should take another break, but the old veteran continued before he could ask. There was another aspect of human warfare that terrified the galaxy, Vexthor said. Your use of psychological weapons. Other species fight with guns and ships and bombs. Humans also fight with ideas and emotions and fear. The display showed intercepts of human communications, broadcasts that had been sent during battles. Vexthor played one of them, and a human voice filled the memorial hall. This is Commander Kyle Barnes of the Defiant. We are heavily damaged, but we are not defeated. We will never be defeated. You can destroy our ships, but you cannot break our spirit. We will fight until we win, or until every last one of us is dead. There is no third option. The recording ended. Vexthor let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. That message was sent minutes before Kyle Barnes rammed his ship into our flagship, he said. It was broadcast on all channels, meant for both human and alien forces to hear. The effect was powerful. Human morale. The afternoon light had shifted. Shadows grew longer across the memorial hall. Jake noticed that his hands were shaking slightly as he adjusted the camera. Linda sat very still, her eyes fixed on Vexthor. They both knew what came next in the story. Every human knew about the day Earth was attacked. Vexthor stood and walked to a different section of the memorial. This part was newer than the rest, the stone still sharp-edged and clean. Names covered the entire wall, thousands upon thousands of them. Human names and alien names mixed together. I was assigned as an observer to the Krell fleet, Vexthor said. By the 4th year of the war, the Zentari had committed to neutrality, but we still gathered intelligence. I was aboard a Krell command ship when High Commander Zechthel announced his plan to invade Earth. I tried to warn him. I told him everything I had learned about humans. He did not listen. What did he say? Jake asked, his voice tight. He said that humans were just another species, that their homeworld would fall like any other planet, that once Earth was conquered, the scattered human forces would lose hope and surrender. Vexthor turned back to face them. He believed that humans were strong because they were fighting for distant colonies. He thought they would fight less hard when facing overwhelming force at home. He was completely wrong, Linda said. Catastrophically wrong, Vexthor confirmed. The Krell assembled the largest invasion fleet in their history. 300 warships, 50,000 ground troops, siege weapons capable of breaking planetary shields. They spent 6 months preparing for the assault. They believed they had planned for every possibility. The holographic display activated again, showing Earth surrounded by red markers. The Krell fleet in attack formation. Vexthor's claws moved slowly as he manipulated the controls, clearly reluctant to relive these memories. They attacked on a Tuesday morning, Earth time, Vexthor said. The first wave was orbital bombardment. They targeted coastal cities, military installations, communication centers. The goal was to cripple Earth's defenses before landing ground forces. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. His father had been in Seattle when the bombardment began. His father had died in the first hour. Earth's orbital defenses fought back immediately, Vexthor continued, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The Krell broke through and began their bombardment. I watched from the command ship as their weapons struck your cities. How bad was it? Linda asked softly. Terrible, Vexthor said. Millions died in the first day. Entire cities were damaged or destroyed. The bombardment should have broken human resistance. Instead, it unified every person on Earth. Within hours, Planetary Defense Commander Captain Dan Foster had organized a resistance network that spanned the entire globe. The display showed footage from Earth during the attack. Buildings burning, people fleeing, chaos everywhere, but also images of humans organizing, fighting back, refusing to surrender despite impossible odds. Captain Foster had survived the siege of Arcturus III, Vexthor said. He understood how to organize civilians into effective resistance forces. He broadcast a message to every device on Earth, telling people to arm themselves to fight however they could to never give up. Vexthor pulled up the recording. Dan Foster's voice, steady and determined despite the chaos around him, filled the hall. This is Captain Foster speaking to all citizens of Earth. We are under attack, but we are not defeated. Pick up weapons, form groups, defend your neighborhoods, help your neighbors. Every person matters. Every action counts. We will not surrender. We will not break. We are humanity, and we will show these invaders what that means. The recording ended. Jake felt tears on his face but didn't wipe them away. The message spread instantly, Vexthor said. Within hours, humans everywhere were organizing. Teachers became soldiers. Doctors became field medics. Engineers built improvised weapons. Even children contributed, carrying supplies and messages. Your entire species mobilized for war. We fight hardest for home, Linda said. The Krell did not understand that, Vexthor replied. They expected broken defenders. They found a planet full of people who would rather die than submit. When Krell ground forces landed, they faced resistance unlike anything they had encountered. The display showed urban warfare, humans fighting from buildings using every weapon available, Krell troops advancing, taking casualties, finding that every street was contested. One example stands out, Vexthor said. A civilian named Melissa Wright lived in a suburb that came under Krell occupation. She was a teacher before the war, no military training. When Krell soldiers entered her neighborhood, she organized her neighbors into a resistance cell. Images appeared showing a woman with determined eyes, holding a rifle that looked too large for her. Melissa Wright and her neighbors fought the Krell for 3 weeks. 27 civilians against 200 trained soldiers. They used traps, ambushes, improvised explosives. They made the Krell pay for every house, every street. Did she survive? Jake asked. Yes, Vexthor said. When human military forces retook the area, they found Melissa Wright and 8 other survivors still fighting. They had reduced the Krell garrison to fewer than 50 soldiers. A teacher and her neighbors had held off a military occupation force. Vexthor's voice filled with something like awe. That pattern repeated across Earth. Everywhere the Krell landed, they faced fierce resistance from people who had never been soldiers. Your species does not have a warrior class. Every human is a potential warrior when defending their home. The display shifted to show the space. battle that raged above Earth. Krell ships trying to maintain their blockade while human forces from across the galaxy rushed back to defend their homeworld. The moment word spread that Earth was under attack, human forces everywhere abandoned their current operations, Vexthor said. They did not wait for orders. They did not coordinate plans. They simply turned their ships toward Earth and accelerated to maximum speed. How long did it take for reinforcements to arrive? Linda asked. The first ships reached Earth within 30 hours, Vexthor said. More arrived every day after that. Human commanders who had been fighting separate campaigns suddenly coordinated into a unified fleet. It was the largest human military force ever assembled. Images showed human ships arriving. Dozens at first, then hundreds, each one immediately joining the battle, throwing themselves at the Krell blockade with desperate courage. Commander Kyle Barnes had survived the war to this point, Vexthor said. He had been promoted to admiral after his actions at Kepler Station. When Earth was attacked, he was commanding a fleet in the frontier sectors, weeks away at normal speed. He pushed his engines beyond safety limits and arrived in 4 days. The display highlighted one ship larger than the others. This was Admiral Barnes's flagship, the Valiant. When he arrived in Earth's orbit, half his fleet was damaged from the emergency journey. His crew was exhausted. His ships were low on ammunition, but he attacked immediately. Vexthor pulled up communications from the battle. Kyle Barnes's voice, older now but still filled with determination, issued orders to his fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Barnes. I know you are tired. I know your ships are damaged. I know we face overwhelming odds. But this is Earth, this is our home. We will fight until we win or until we can no longer fight. There is no retreat. There is no surrender. Attack formation. Engage at will. The recording captured the sounds of battle, explosions, and weapons fire and shouted orders. Then the transmission cut out. Admiral Barnes led a direct assault on the Krell command ship, Vexthor said quietly. The same ship I was observing from. His flagship rammed through 2 escort vessels and opened fire at point-blank range. The impact nearly destroyed both ships. You were there, Jake said, realization dawning. You saw it happen. I saw everything, Vexthor confirmed. I was on the command deck when Admiral Barnes broke through. I saw High Commander Zechthol's face when he realized the battle was lost. I saw the fear in his eyes when he understood that humans would never stop fighting for their homeworld. The display showed the damage to the Krell command ship. Massive holes torn in the hull, systems failing, crew evacuating. Admiral Barnes died in that attack, Vexthor said. His ship was destroyed by secondary explosions. But his sacrifice rallied the entire human fleet. They pressed the attack with renewed fury. The Krell fleet began to break apart. On the ground, the situation was equally desperate for the Krell. Vexthor continued. Major Amy Rodriguez, who had also survived the war to this point, led the counteroffensive to retake occupied cities. She commanded 30,000 Marines against 50,000 Krell soldiers. Images showed Amy Rodriguez, older now, her armor showing the wear of years of combat. But her eyes still burned with that same determination Jake had seen in earlier footage. Major Rodriguez did not try to match the Krell in a conventional battle, Vexthor said. Instead, she coordinated with the civilian resistance groups. People like Melissa Wright, who had been fighting alone, suddenly had military support and direction. The Krell found themselves facing organized opposition from every direction. The display showed the complexity of the ground campaign. Human forces moving through cities, connecting with civilian fighters, systematically isolating and eliminating Krell positions. Night had fallen outside the memorial hall. The interior lights had automatically brightened, casting new shadows across the walls covered in names. Vexthor sat silent for several minutes, gathering strength for the final part of his story. Jake and Linda waited patiently, knowing they were approaching something important. Finally, Vexthor spoke. His voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on the entire room. After Earth survived the invasion, the war changed completely. Before, humans had fought defensively, protecting their territory and colonies. After, they launched a total war against the Krell Dominion. Not just to defeat them, but to ensure they could never threaten anyone again. The holographic display activated, showing a map of Krell space, dozens of star systems, hundreds of worlds. Red markers indicating military installations, shipyards, command centers. The human strategy was methodical and ruthless, Vexthor continued. They did not attack randomly. They systematically dismantled every aspect of Krell military capability. They started with supply lines, cutting off resources to Krell fleets. Then they destroyed shipyards, preventing new vessels from being built. Then they eliminated command structures, leaving Krell forces without coordination. How long did this take? Linda asked. 8 months, Vexthor said. In 8 months, humanity went from defending their homeworld to conquering 47 Krell star systems. It was the most aggressive military campaign in galactic history. Jake felt a mixture of pride and unease. He had studied the final phase of the war in preparation for this documentary, but hearing it described by someone who had witnessed it made the scale more real. Lieutenant Greg Palmer's special operations teams led many of the initial strikes, Vexthor said. They infiltrated Krell space ahead of the main fleet, sabotaging defenses and spreading chaos. By the time human warships arrived, the Krell were already disorganized and demoralized. The display showed several of these operations. Small teams of humans striking at critical infrastructure, disappearing before defenders could respond, appearing somewhere else days later to strike again. Greg Palmer himself led the mission to infiltrate Krell Prime, the enemy homeworld, Vexthor said. This was considered impossible. Krell Prime was the most heavily defended planet in their space. Orbital defense platforms, ground-based weapons, millions of soldiers. But Palmer found a way. How? Jake asked. By being patient and ruthless in equal measure, Vexthor replied. His team spent 2 months studying Krell Prime's defenses. They identified a weakness in the planet's supply network. Commercial freighters were allowed to bypass certain security checks to maintain the flow of goods. Palmer's team captured a freighter, killed the crew, and used it to reach the planet's surface. The casual mention of killed crew made Jake flinch slightly. This was the reality of war that didn't make it into the heroic stories. Sometimes humans had to do terrible things to achieve necessary goals. Once on Krell Prime, Palmer's team split up, Vexthor continued. They spent weeks moving through the planet's industrial sectors, planting dormant explosives in key facilities. Power plants, communications hubs, water treatment centers, not enough to destroy them, but enough to cripple them temporarily. Why not destroy them completely? Linda asked. Because Palmer understood that killing soldiers was warfare, but killing civilians was genocide, Vexthor said. Humans made a clear distinction. They would destroy military targets without mercy, but they tried to minimize harm to non-combatants. It was a line many other species would have crossed. The display showed the results of Palmer's operation. A map of Krell Prime lit up with markers showing simultaneous explosions across the planet. Not devastating, but enough to throw the entire world into chaos for several critical hours. When those explosives detonated, the human fleet arrived in orbit, Vexthor said. The timing was perfect. Krell Prime's defenses were confused and disorganized. Admiral Kyle Barnes had trained his successor well. The new human fleet commander pressed the advantage immediately. Who commanded the fleet? Jake asked. Admiral Lisa Bennett, Vexthor said. The same woman who had fought as a Marine at Kepler Station, who had survived being shot and continued fighting. She had risen through the ranks to command the largest human battle group, and she led them to victory at Krell Prime. Images appeared showing space combat on a massive scale, hundreds of ships exchanging fire, explosions lighting up the darkness, debris fields expanding as vessels were destroyed. The Battle of Krell Prime lasted 3 days, Vexthor said. Admiral Bennett used tactics that the Krell could not counter. Human ships worked in coordinated groups, protecting each other's weaknesses, exploiting enemy vulnerabilities. When Krell vessels damaged human ships, the damaged ships would ram enemy vessels rather than retreat. Every loss cost the Krell dearly. On the ground, Major Amy Rodriguez led the invasion force, Vexthor continued. 100,000 human Marines against 3 million Krell defenders. By conventional military logic, the attack should have failed. But Rodriguez did not use conventional tactics. The display showed the ground campaign, human forces landing in multiple locations simultaneously, avoiding the heavily defended areas, striking at logistics and command centers instead. Major Rodriguez understood that Krell soldiers were brave and well-trained, but they depended on clear orders from their command structure, Vexthor explained. She targeted the command centers first. Within the first day, she had captured or killed most of the senior Krell commanders on the planet. The remaining forces were leaderless and confused. She also coordinated with Greg Palmer's teams, who were still operating on the planet, Vexthor said. They fed her intelligence about Krell troop movements, identified weak points in defenses, sabotaged reinforcements before they could reach the front lines. It was a perfect combination of conventional and unconventional warfare. Images showed the progression of the ground campaign. Krell-controlled territory shrinking day by day as human forces advanced systematically through major cities. The Krell fought hard, Vexthor said. They knew this was their last stand. If Krell Prime fell, their empire was finished. But fighting hard was not enough against an enemy that fought harder. Every time the Krell mounted a counterattack, the humans absorbed the losses and pushed forward anyway. There was one moment that defined the entire campaign, Vexthor continued. His voice grew quieter, more somber. A Krell general named Vroktar made a last desperate gamble. He gathered 20,000 soldiers and launched a surprise attack on the human command center, where Major Rodriguez was coordinating operations. The display showed the attack, Krell forces moving through underground tunnels emerging directly beneath human defenses, catching them by surprise. The attack should have worked, Vexthor said. The humans were caught off guard. Major Rodriguez found herself defending the command center with only 300 Marines against 20,000 Krell warriors. Any rational commander would have evacuated and regrouped elsewhere. But she didn't, Jake said. She did not, Vexthor confirmed. Instead, she sent a message to all human forces in the area. She said, "This is Rodriguez. We are under attack at the command center. Do not attempt a rescue. Continue the main offensive. We will hold here as long as necessary." The old alien's voice filled with emotion. For 6 hours, 300 humans held that position against 20,000 Krell. They fought in the corridors, in the rooms, hand to hand when ammunition ran out. They refused to give ground. And they sang. Sang? Linda asked, surprised. Human war songs, Vexthor said. I heard the recordings later. Even as they fought and died, they sang songs about courage and defiance. The sound terrified the Krell soldiers. Here were defenders who should have been broken and desperate, but instead they sang while they fought. Tears ran down Vexthor's alien features, a physiological response that transcended species. When human reinforcements finally broke through to the command center, they found Major Rodriguez and 97 surviving Marines still holding the position. They had killed over 8,000 Krell warriors. The floor was covered in bodies, human and alien mixed together, but the command center had not fallen. The display showed images from the aftermath. Jake had to look away. The carnage was overwhelming. That battle broke the Krell psychologically, Vexthor said. General Vroktar committed suicide rather than face defeat. The remaining Krell forces on the planet began to surrender in large numbers. They had thrown their best warriors at a tiny force of humans and been destroyed. They had no will left to continue fighting. In space, Admiral Bennett had already won, Vexthor continued. The Krell fleet was shattered. Orbital defenses were silent. She sent a message to High Commander Zekthul, who was hiding in a bunker beneath the planet's capital city. Vexthor pulled up the recording. Lisa Bennett's voice, tired but firm, filled the hall. This is Admiral Bennett to High Commander Zekthul. Your fleet is destroyed. Your armies are defeated. Krell Prime is under human control. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or I will begin orbital bombardment of military targets. I do not want to kill any more of your people, but I will if you force me to. The choice is yours. The recording ended. Vexthor manipulated the controls, showing Zekthul's response.